Bring this meeting to order at 6:33 p.m. Tonight, we're going to start with a public hearing on the e-learning program pursuant to our notice and agenda. At 6:33 p.m. I'm going to start with Sarah. Usually we start with citizen comments, but I noticed the citizen comments on the agenda are after your presentation. So we'll have you start first. Wonderful.
Need a roll call.
Yes, we do need that, don't we? Okay. Secretary, can you please call the roll?
Yes, figure it.
Here.
Rose.
Here.
Carl.
Here.
Hitzke.
Here.
Durin.
Here.
Delatier here. Aguirre.
Here.
Thank you.
Now, Sarah.
Tonight, we actually have an interpreter with us. Guadalupe Crosco.
Welcome.
Yes.
For inviting me. I'm gonna repeat everything that's been said for the audience in Spanish. So if you see me confused or raising my hand, it's just that I need some time so I can catch up. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm gonna have to practice talking slower than normal, so this will be nerve-wracking for both of us.
I would appreciate that.
Tonight, the public hearing is in regards to an e-learning plan for our school district that would work for 3 years. And we would be applying through our Regional Office of Education via Illinois State Board of Education. So it counts for us as well as the state. In 2018, the state of Illinois allowed school districts to have the opportunity to apply for e-learning days if they submitted a proposal that had certain requirements in it regarding teacher expectations, student expectations, technology resources. And so post-pandemic, we now realize that this is something that we're able to facilitate and do in an emergency situation. And so we are ready and excited to have the opportunity to apply for this approval. How am I doing? The benefits for an e-learning day are that you would have continuity of instructional practices in the course of the school year. For a situation that would be pre-planned, like we knew a water main is going to be under construction and one of the schools wouldn't have water for a 2-day period, we could plan ahead and then make sure that those students can continue learning in a remote environment while the remainder of the district is still able to come in person. Or let's say it's 105 degrees and the air conditioners broke. That might be a situation in which we could have our students work from home for a day until we get that part found or however it happens. Just because we would apply and receive our e-learning certificate doesn't mean that we necessarily have to do them. Traditional snow days are a valuable part of childhood and sometimes very important to our community. If there's no, we'll get to it in a minute, but if there's no power, let's say, and we're all powerless, then we're just gonna have a regular emergency day. But in some situations, an e-learning day might be a really good option. And so it's just nice to have the option. In terms of communication, the intention is because we have Seesaw as a digital tool in our K-3 classrooms, we would use that. And our students in grades 4 through 8 use Google Classroom. Papara is the ability for our teachers to see what the students are doing on their Chromebooks, and that would still be set up and available to track them during the day if they were online. And old school email is always an option for our families or who just want to check in on what the students are up to. Challenges might be that if a student doesn't have internet at home, that's something that we need to be aware of. But we do know that with pre-planning, because these days wouldn't be last minute, we wouldn't announce them at 6 AM the day of. Specifically for our Washington students, having advance notice is really helpful for them. We could always have paper resources available sent home. And then students would have 3 days to complete that work. So, for example, if a student actually was sick on an e-learning day, they could still be sick. And then they would have their makeup assignment just like a regular school day would. Or they could, if they're home, but they're not sick enough that they couldn't complete some of their tasks, they could complete their tasks remotely that day. Okay. Staff guidelines is one of the things that we had to explain in the proposal for the ROE. And this is a slide that we worked in conjunction with our MIA team leadership so that we could make sure that we were all on the same page in terms of what the expectations were and how that would be handled. So the teachers did realize, and the staff would have to come up with learning experience that need to result in evidence of learning. It's not something that they can necessarily say is a task that wouldn't have some sort of product associated with it. Because as part of our compliance of an e-learning day, we need to make sure that they actually completed the assignment. We also need to make sure that each of the subjects have a task or assignment that is between 35 and 45 minutes long, so that we can accrue 5 hours of instructional time over the course of that e-learning day for a school day credit. And then the students would need to present that evidence of learning within 3 days of the e-learning day experience. So even if they weren't able to do it on that first day, they would have time to complete that work. In terms of our student and guardian guidelines, in pre-K through third, we would have the parents or the grandma, the aunt, whoever is watching the child that day, maybe the babysitter's there helping, they would be the one to log in and complete the attendance log through Seesaw. For students in grades 4 through 8, they're more independent and would be able to log in and click the attendance button so that we know that they were present for the e-learning day. And that would be the indication to know if a child was homesick and taking a traditional sick day, or if they were engaged in the e-learning work for that particular day. Any questions or comments?
Hello,
Yes, sir.
so does this system put any kind of a burden on IT or on systems, networks?
No more of a burden than a regular school day. The burden potentially could be, so for Washington specifically, the students are not they don't carry around their iPad every day. The iPads are on a cart. And so it would be the expectation of the administrative team and with tech support to make sure that all of those devices, we have a list already established that said that each device has a barcode on it.
Yeah.
And so we know which device goes to which student.
Yeah.
But it would take time to distribute all of those devices to the students, which is why we would never use this the morning of in a situation,
Oh.
just to make sure that we have it. We basically need to know by noon the day before that we want to move into an e-learning experience so that we'd have enough time to get all the devices out to the kids.
I thought I saw somewhere in there that someone from IT is on call.
Yes, so we do have the technology email address that all of our students and families can email right now. And then we have Dan has a tier 2 tech support person dedicated to instructional support. And so he would also be available. the help, should something come up. But really, the students should be using Seesaw and Google Classroom as part of their regular instructional routine now. And so it shouldn't be a huge learning curve for them to access that from home as opposed to just accessing it in the room.
Thank you.
So, not as concerned about the lower level, but the 4 through 8, when they click and say, yes, I'm in attendance,
Mhm.
do we have a guarantee that they're truly in attendance?
Well, I mean,
Where they can click and say, yeah, I'm here, but maybe they're not paying attention.
But it's not just saying, I mean, that's part of it is the attendance part saying I'm here, but if there are those e-learning experiences they have to do, if those tasks don't get done on their Chromebook, the teachers are gonna know they weren't really participating. That's why there need to be those learning experiences going
yes,
through there
as
as
there
part of that.
Yeah, I think one of the slides, it mentions that students must still submit that evidence of learning in order to be counted as present.
But that's how they do a lot of their assignments now. They go through Google Classroom, they get the assignments, they do it. This is just a different way of allowing them to do it at home if we so choose. Where some districts that have these e-learning plans have them in place so that they can, on the morning of, oh, it's looked like there's too much snow, we're just calling it. Then they switch to an e-learning day and they do that. Our district is unique that we can't necessarily do that because we don't have one-to-one devices already deployed for our pre-K to 3. So it takes some pre-planning to do, but in the event that maybe we, like Sarah said, if we have one school that's down, we don't necessarily have to shut the whole district down to do that. We can adapt. And I like the idea of doing this because it gives us the option of, again, we've had water main breaks at the high school the last 2 years that have used emergency days where, then the day after we talked about it, and then we had one at Sandburg. So thought we were a little clairvoyant at my house, but that's fine. And this allows us the opportunity to adapt for that without necessarily needing to use those emergency days. If we get towards the end of the year, then families can plan vacations and know they can leave on that day after school or what have you.
I guess just, if a student decides to try to circumvent the system,
Mhm.
and which obviously they're probably not going to get their e-learning assignment done, but how quickly will the teacher know that they have not completed that day, or is it going to be the next day, or?
So as soon as you can, if you're doing your assignment in Google Classroom or in Seesaw, it's pretty instantaneous. Whether you receive that assignment, if the teacher has it set up to automatically go to a Dropbox or go into their email, or just as a ping in their Google Classroom that someone turned in an assignment, all of those would be right away. The student has 3 days to complete the work. So it stands to reason that if we all came back to school on day 2, if it was my room, I would say, all right, you 6, don't forget, you've got one more day to get me your work from our e-learning day before I have to, take further action or to request additional tasks from you.
Okay.
So it shouldn't be too long of a turnaround time.
And I imagine it would be an assignment, just like any other assignment that would appear in Power School for the grades that are using Power School, the upper grades. So just like any other assignment that doesn't get turned in, a parent can go in and go, hey, what's going on with this? Just, and then it would be like any other assignment in there. But this gives the opportunity, still, it's leaving it up to the superintendent to decide in any given night, the way that we have crafted this and the way that you're asking us to adopt this
Yes.
would be to give the superintendent that authority to decide when and if to use, but this is just allowing us to have e-learning days. Whereas prior to the pandemic, we didn't have an e-learning plan and that was not an option for our district.
Correct, yes.
Good.
We were able to have remote learning under the emergency order. And that was a temporary approval for everyone across the state. And now we are formally asking the original Office of Ed to allow us to implement a non-emergency plan. As an option.
I think it's a good hybrid.
Yeah.
To do that. Go ahead.
So I do think it's a great idea. I mean, we talked about the impact it has on the school calendar. You know, it's also gonna benefit family planning and scheduling as well. But I just want to clarify, because you mentioned that you wouldn't be able to use it the morning of, is that correct?
That would not be our intention to use it the morning of. Technically, we could. I think especially
'Cause the
it
water
would
main
be
break
more
would probably
likely
a morning of thing.
the middle school, I think, because the students do take their devices back and forth on a pretty regular basis. But there are occasions, even as adults, we might leave our devices at work one night. And then you think, oh, no. That's,
You've never done that, have you?
no, of course not. Because that would be not forward planning of me.
But knowing that we have this would allow, if we had forecasted a blizzard or something, it would allow the superintendent to kind of go, hey, this is a realistic possibility.
Yeah.
Let's plan for it maybe the day before so that we could be ready to do it.
And if for some reason the snowstorm doesn't happen, we're still providing instructions so that day would still count.
And that's the
Correct.
point. Where if we didn't have a plan in place, we just have burned an emergency day for nothing.
Really, the only kind of big challenge would be that group of students that doesn't have the
Yeah.
device with them already.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
But if the teachers and staff all know that we have this, they're gonna have some e-learning experiences in their pocket so that if something comes up, they can do that. They may be more likely to print out those packets, put them in the folder, just in case, if it looks like we might, you know,
Mhm.
and then we are ready to
Yes.
do that if that's what.
We've been brainstorming already, you know, tic-tac-toe boards or
Choice
common-
boards.
choice boards, right, where you can say, we need you to complete 2 tasks out of the reading list and 2 tasks out of the math list and that kind of thing. So students will still have some choice involved in the process. And then if they do or don't have certain technology at home or access to certain resources, they can just choose something from a different column.
So my question has to do, Eric, you brought up a good point. If there are emergency days, you know, emergencies are not planned usually, right? You know, it happens right away. So what are you gonna do about it? But more than anything, the communication that you mentioned for the lower grades, which is Seesaw, do we have any data that we know that the parents are connected through Seesaw? Do we have anything that says, you know, out of 20 kids in the classroom, 20 parents are connected through Seesaw? Because then we will not have that communication between the parent and the school, which we're gonna lose those kids. And we know that the kids that don't have that communication are the ones sometimes that need it the most. And if possible, can we test it out? Can we do a day to test it out? Or does it sound ridiculous to do that just to see what would happen you know, because we could all plan about it, but you're really not gonna get to see it until it really does happen and you're there doing it and trying to make sure that we don't have, just like any, you know, drill that we do. We do the drills for that reason, so that they're comfortable taking it home and doing it on their own. So those are just a few comments. I don't know if anybody wants to help answer.
So Seesaw is, I think every teacher should be able to know offhand now what parents are attached to it and what aren't, because that's how they do communication with their weekly newsletters, they're already communicating to parents with Seesaw. So you may have the data on who has it and who doesn't, but teachers already are using Seesaw for other communication. It's not as though this is the only time they would be using Seesaw. So we shouldn't be losing kids that way, because they should already have a line out there, and for teachers would know which of their families aren't on it, to know which of theirs they have to put in the backpack instead of on through Seesaw or something. Does that make sense?
I can certainly find out. I don't.
I can
know.
help you. I'm just gonna make a comment, but it's been how many weeks I haven't received a code? And you know, as a parent, I have not received a code and I have asked for it numerous times. And I'm one of the parents that will actually communicate, you know, and say, hey, I haven't received the code. Hey, can you please send it when you have a chance? So that's just, you know, my experience personally, but I want to make sure that, you know, the parents are connected. If they're good to go, they're good to go, you know? And it could be that rare situation where, you know, hasn't received the code is not often. But 90% of the kids have it, well, then it's okay. But can we also maybe think about some of the students that will not use technology, and maybe, like you said, have something at home that they'll be able to do, like a
Mhm.
tic-tac-toe or selection thing where they can just select what activities they can do, and can we give them credit for that?
Yes. That's part of the plan that we have set aside to turn it, that there would be both print and digital options.
There were sample, if you looked at the e-learning plan in the packet, you could click on them and actually see
Send
some
it
of
to
those
you.
choice boards that they did, which I think were helpful to see at the different grade levels, what some of the different ones they're doing. It kind of harkens back to our COVID e-learning planning that us as parents had to deal with. I don't think this is a good option for general instruction all the time, but
Right.
for a couple of days here and there to keep the calendar going and to allow for those options are good. But clearly, if we do have morning of emergencies that are truly emergencies, that's why we'll have the option to have emergency days and not need any of those. So that's what I like about this, is it allows us to be flexible rather than only relying on technology or only relying on emergencies. We can do both.
I was gonna ask, how many do you have to put in the proposal, how many days we can use this for in the school year? Is there a max amount or anything like that?
That is a great question. I will have to get back to you. I'm not exactly sure. Off the top of my head, I feel
Right, because we have
plan
like up to
was
5
there to-
emergency days, and then if we go beyond the 5th one, right, we just kind of
Mhm.
throw it out the window. Does the
Yes.
same thing apply? I guess something similar apply to this too.
I will go back and look and see if I can find out a specific number. Yes.
I just want to add that I have never had an issue with Seesaw. I have my two kids that are in second and first grade, and they've always received codes. And I've always been able to communicate through the teachers through Seesaw, so I hope that's an outlier. Even, when I go on curriculum night and conferences, there's always the QR to scan. And then finally, I just again want to reiterate that they have 3 days to make up this work. So regardless if there's, they can't access the internet, which we, want to take care of with hotspots and whatnot, but if they can't, then they do have the 3 days to make it up. So that's built into the plan.
When we were doing discussions on strategic planning and goals, this is a topic that we discussed and that we talked about. And we looked at what happened, with the COVID and the pandemic, and how not just us, but across the board, everybody's scrambling to get something in place. That's why I think this is so important, and it's very gonna become a very integral part of what we do at so many levels. Because now we have a plan in place. So whether it's COVID or a water main break, there's something in place that's gonna allow us to function. And even you mentioned the heat thing. I mean, this summer with the heat on the news every day, there was discussions about what was going on with these schools that were shutting down. So I think this is a very, very significant and very important part of what we should be doing in terms of planning and being able to look ahead and have things in place so that we can continue to function.
Thank you.
Allows us to be proactive instead of reactive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
5 days, George.
5 days.
Okay. We can have up to 5.
For students with an IEP, I know that, I think it was on there, I can recall the minutes that they would be missing of that help and support. How would we provide that?
So knowing that the plans would be established prior to, the lessons would be developed in conjunction with their case manager to make sure that they're appropriate to their instructional goals. And then we would work to make sure that those minutes are made up when they return or potentially during that remote period. And the same would go for students who are seeing the reading specialist or the math interventionist or the EL teacher.
I feel like I can speak to that as a case manager, just in my job too. Say they miss speech therapy, that's an easy, they can reschedule it another day. If they're missing a resource class, I reach out to my kids and schedule a synchronous e-learning experience that day too, to try and make up for it. Otherwise, you know, we can make up for it another time of the day. So I would assume it's the same.
Yes, because the teachers are still working that day. They have to be available between 8 and 3 to help students who have questions about a task or an assignment. So it's a nice opportunity for a teacher to have a one-on-one or a one-on-3 session, if they can get access to their kids. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions for Sarah?
Okay,
Okay, moving on then to citizen comments on this topic.
Correct.
Just this topic alone.
Yeah.
For the e-learning plan as part of this public hearing. Do we have any citizens present who wish to address the board on this issue? Okay. Hearing none. If there's no further business to come before the board on this issue, the meeting stands adjourned at 6:59 PM. I have a motion to adjourn the public meeting.
So move.
I'll second. Secretary, please call the roll.
Hitzke,
Yes.
Fingerhut.
Aye.
Rose,
Aye.
Carl,
I.
Aguirre.
Aye.
Pelletier, aye. Durin,
I.
Figure out which word.
Yes.
That's okay, it worked. Moving on. Okay, so now we'll move on to our regular meeting. I will call the meeting to order for the Mundelein Elementary School District 75 at 7 PM on September 26th. Secretary, please call the roll.
Aguirre,
Here.
Pelletier, here. Durin,
Here.
Hitzke, here. Carl,
Here.
Rose,
Yeah.
Fingerhut.
Here. Okay. Now, on general topics, do we have anybody present this evening who wishes to address the board? Is there anybody online who wishes to address them? Okay, okay, well, hello. Unless he would like to address the board, we'll move on. Moving on to the Board of Education comments. Are any board members would like to bring anything up?
So we can talk about that. That thing.
The policy issue?
No, the other, the February thing.
Oh, no, we
Not
can
yet?
do that. We can do that further down. I would say this is just more comments, just in general. I will go ahead and comment and say thank you to those who came out for Bratfest. I thought that was, it was a fun evening, as always. Each year, we're getting a little bit more back to normal and tweaking things, in ways, so they were able to have a lot of fun outside, and we had a lot of people that were all present, all of us that were there working hard. We ran out of brats, and some people were not happy about that, but we'll adjust that next year. But it was a very good turnout, even though it was before homecoming. I think lots of people really enjoyed that, so thank you to all of you who were able to come and help with that. And, you know, for, there were a few of us that were with the parade in different aspects of the parade ahead of time. So that was a fun time for everybody. So thank you to those who were able to come out and join. I know some people had conflicts, and that's totally okay. So that's the only comment that I wanted to make sure I brought up. There are no further comments, and we can direct the code of conduct section to Eric.
We are on code number 3. Code number 3 reads, I will recognize that a board member has no legal authority as an individual and that decisions can be made only by a majority vote at a board meeting. The author goes on to say, school board members must learn quickly that they have only one vote and are not a majority. They shall make no promises about how a vote may proceed and not work privately outside of board meetings to influence the votes of other board members. All this will do is quickly compromise the effectiveness and trust of the offending school board member. Thank you.
Moving on to the District 75 reports. I think we're starting this evening with the business office.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak tonight. So in your board packet, we have the CEDAL property purchase agreement. For the past several months, we've been discussing and negotiating this contract with CEDAL for the property located at 330 North Ridgemore. It's known as CEDAL South to some of you, Sally Potter to others. It's important that we note that while we were bringing this tonight, their attorneys are still in the process of reviewing the documents, so we will actually not be approving this tonight. But that's not, no need to worry. We do not take possession of the property until mid-June 2024. So we have ample time to get this purchase contract worked out. But the bottom line is the purchase contract will not exceed $630,000. So just be prepared. That will be coming to you just as soon as their attorney has finalized it, ours has on our end. And with that, does anyone have any questions?
So we will not be voting on that this evening, is that what you're saying? Okay. And so our attorney has already drafted it, approved it, and sent it on pursuant to our previous directions. And we're just waiting for them to approve it, so there's nothing for us to adopt and sign yet.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We'll now hear the report of the technology office. Or department.
Oh, yeah, there.
Good evening. My name is Dan Cron, Chief Information Officer for District 75 and District 120. I'm happy to be here tonight to give an update on our 3-year technology plan. I'll try to go slow. So the technology 3-year plan was a cooperative plan developed with the help of community members, administration, and staff from both districts. This committee work resulted in a big emphasis on safety. Data security is also a real threat that no one can say they are 100% protected from. Last year alone, there was 1,981 schools that were hit with ransomware. You may have heard on the news just about a month ago, the University of Michigan shut down their entire network due to a cyber attack during their first week of school. That is pretty bad. That being said, physical security goes without saying, very important due to the events that happened over the past few years. It's even more important to focus on protecting not only our data, but our students and staff safety as well. This is why, with the help of our maintenance department and our security departments, we are implementing some state-of-the-art technologies, as you will see. In this past year, we accomplished our goals in stage 1. We identified the areas that needed to be addressed, planned, began, and in some instances completed. The implementation of technologies that support the work of the committee, while also adhering to the district's insurance requirements. Next, please. I've already gone over these slides in detail last year, and they're in your board packet, so I'm not going to go over every single one of these items, but I would like to touch on some of the most important ones. One of our goals was to implement a safety alert system throughout the districts. This involves installing IP speakers and clocks and phone handsets in every classroom. These devices don't only tell the time and do overhead announcements, they also integrate with a product called Fusion. And Fusion allows us to send alarms to every speaker, strobing lights, scrolling display that indicates an alarm, for example, tornado watch, seek shelter, or something like that. This alarm would also broadcast on every phone in every classroom and to the Mundelein Police Department. It can be sent with the touch of a button using the Fusion app on a cell phone. And we are currently working with our head of security, Fred Cleora, to implement the system. And to date, we have installed IP speakers and phone handsets in every classroom at Carl Sandburg. So they're completely operational with IP speakers, clocks, and phones right now. We hope to have Washington, Lincoln, and Mechanics Grove done by the end of the next summer. We have also upgraded every video surveillance camera at all 4 schools with brand new 4K cloud connected cameras that could be accessed via the internet and any device that has internet. Safely and securely, of course. These cameras include many new high-tech features, such as like, we could go in the camera, we could see a picture of somebody we're looking for, that's wearing a yellow jacket, and we could say, find this person. It'll scrub all the video and it'll show you in a timeline everywhere that person has gone. So it's a pretty cool new technologies involved in these new cameras. And also because they can be accessed over the internet securely, they can be accessed by the Mundelein Police Department at their dispatch and also on their squad cars. We're also in the process of refreshing staff laptops. And as we do so, these new laptops will be in our Microsoft cloud-based management system called Azure. And they will include a next-gen antivirus and advanced threat protections. And we hope to have this refresh completed by the fall of 2024. We have migrated District 75 students, student Google domain in with District 120's Google domain. And I'm happy to report that this is first year that students from Carl Sandburg were able to carry over all of their email and their Google Docs and Google files over to the high school with them. And going forward, this will be the case going forward with every student from now on. That goes from District 75 to District 120. Another accomplishment this past year has been moving over the phone system. So in the past year, we've had numerous complaints about drop calls, static, delays when you answer the phone. Also, the phone server has crashed a couple of times due to power outages because Mundelein isn't known for very good power. So we physically moved the entire phone server over to the Mundelein High School's data center, installed a new circuit. And just so you know, Mundelein High School's data center has redundant cooling and redundant electricity on battery and also emergency generator. It's also secured with door access. We have not heard of any complaints with the phone system since. We have also completed the replacement of the door entry system at every District 75 building. The new fob system is called OpenPath, as you are aware. This is a cloud-based system that is highly secure and easy to manage, and it works with Bluetooth on staff devices, or we can issue them a physical fob if they prefer. Being able to control door access in an emergency on any internet-connected device is a huge safety bonus for the district, and being cloud-based makes it more secure. Lastly, we're in the process of installing an outdoor wireless mesh throughout each District 75 school to support emergency vehicles in case of emergency and to support outdoor learning spaces. We hope to have this completed by next summer. Next slide, please. And as you can see, many of the District 75 technology projects coincide with the projects in District 120, and in some cases intertwine with each other, such as the emergency alert system Fusion. Having both districts on Fusion means that we can lock down both districts at the same time if we need to and communicate emergency related information instantly. Having next-gen antivirus and threat protection is a must at both districts because we share the same network now. Also, when District 120 replaces their camera system with the same cloud-based camera system as District 75, we'll be able to access all 5 schools from a single interface. And likewise, when District 120 goes to OpenPath as well, then the employees can enjoy the benefits of using their cell phone as fob in all 5 schools and all 7 buildings. Next. So I believe we're making some pretty big strides in accomplishing our goals to meet what we have visualized for both districts. We are on par to complete all of these projects by 2025. And the 3-year plan is fluid, so changes may occur over the next year or so. But as we enter stage 3, we feel confident that we'll have accomplished much of these goals for both districts, but we'll continue to monitor, evaluate, make adjustments to the plan as necessary to ensure that we're meeting the needs of the districts and doing everything we can to try to prepare for uncertainties to the best of our ability. Any questions?
I had a quick question, I'm sorry.
Can you explain what the mesh, the outdoor mesh is?
So
Sounded
outdoor,
interesting.
My
like-
question was about that, so go ahead.
all right, so an outdoor mesh is that we have these wireless access points. They're about this big. They get mounted on the buildings, either on the side sockets or with like Unistrut on top. Then they go in a spectrum like this, and the purpose of the outdoor Wi-Fi again is, for example, Mundelein High School had a drill a few years back where they actually had Homeland Security come in, and a Homeland Security truck, really cool, came into the parking lot, and they accessed our Wi-Fi and our cameras and everything from that truck. So having the outdoor Wi-Fi in an emergency situation, we have squad cars and everything that want to access our doors. We can unlock our doors remotely if we needed to, cameras and et cetera, is huge for safety. But it also allows our learning spaces to be able to use Chromebooks or iPads if they need to while they're out there in a teacher's device. So it actually, we're looking at blanketing the campus, and it came in handy also during the pandemic, because some parents would come to the school and go into the parking lot to get Wi-Fi if they needed to.
So that was my question leading to what Marcella had said earlier. So do we have the Wi-Fi on then all weekend, or is it only on during the school days, or how does that work?
Wi-Fi broadcast 24 hours.
Okay, so if a family didn't have internet at home, but were able to get to the parking lot, they should, as long as we have power, obviously, they should still be able to, on their like school Chromebook, use the school Wi-Fi if they already had access to it.
Yes, and in addition to that, if you're a District 120 student, you can access it at all 5 schools, and vice versa. If you're a District 75 student that goes to MG but lives closer to
The high school.
the high school or Washington or whatever you're close to, it'll work for both districts.
So
all
that's
5
another
schools.
way to try to increase access if we are doing anything e-learning, and but at least we have that option. If you don't have internet or your internet home goes down, you can get to
Correct.
one of the schools, at least you can have access to it. Not that you need to for some of these things, but that was the question.
Anything?
I would make a comment. You made in your presentation a comment that you think that we made great strides. And
I
I
think
would
so.
agree,
That's personal.
but I would agree because
Thank
the
you.
things that you're talking about. I mean, I remember when we first started doing some of this stuff. Setting it up with the squad cars and that,
Yeah.
and how far it's come. Because the bottom line is, this is really. A safety issue for the school, if that were to occur. That we'd be able to be successful in a response with the police department, with the staff, with the students. I think this is great. I think we've done a hell of a job.
Right, and when we met, it was about 13 years ago.
Yeah.
And to access the cameras, we had to install software, then we had to install VPN software. And I had to go out there and
Right.
basically teach them how to use it all. And in a pinch, in an emergency, who knows if that would really
Right.
work well. So having these cloud-based systems really increases safety and response time as well.
I think too, being able to get that voicemail through your email, it will also benefit on those e-learning days too. If you've got parents, sending emails, but also trying to call your extension, you'll be able to get those at home while you're doing your e-learning work.
Right, and one of the things I did not touch on was one of our plans to move to a cloud-based phone system as well. And that would probably happen not next year, but the following year. And that would actually give teachers a lot more flexibility in stuff like Google. Very similar to Google Voice, where you can have your handset, your phone, anywhere you go. And if you made a call, it would look like you're calling from your classroom.
Not so much at our district, but I can't tell you how many teachers at the high school, when I went to the open house there, for 2 different students, said, multiple teachers go, here's my number, because I'm supposed to give it to you, but I don't check it, I don't listen to it, and I'm hardly ever in my classroom. So that would obviously, I mean, they have it, but they're saying do my email, because that's how which makes sense. So, but that would allow them to open up a communication option that's more realistic.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the report of human resources.
Thank you, Dan.
Good evening. For your review and consideration, I have a proposal to amend board policy 7-180 prevention of and response to bullying, intimidation, and harassment. Earlier this summer, the governor approved legislation that amended the Illinois School Code that added 3 new characteristics in the prevention of bullying. Those characteristics are physical appearance, socioeconomic status, academic status. Additionally, the policy changed the requirement that the district promptly notify a parent of a bullying incident to notifying that parents within 24 hours. And then at the last part, it incorporates by reference bullying as well as other threats, suggestions, and instances of self-harm need to be reported to the parent or guardian as well.
So can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
So reading through this. I don't see anywhere in there that was any sort of stipulation that the police would be notified in certain circumstances. Is there-
That'd be correct, because the school would be evaluating that behavior through the lens of a violation of school policy.
Yeah,
If there would be a criminal element to that, I anticipate that the dean of students or that the building administration would notify the school resource officer to evaluate that same behavior as well.
The changes that were in yellow that are in here, you're saying those are the ones that were prompted by the statute or the legal change
That is correct.
this summer. I noticed that part of the policy also talks about how the board is going to monitor this policy every 2 years
Mhm.
for reevaluation, et cetera, and it lays out what that process includes for the reevaluation.
Mhm.
You know, giving us information about frequency of victimization, student, staff, and family observations of safety at school, identification of areas of the school where bullying occurs, types of bullying, and bystander intervention or participation. Is this anticipated that that would be dealt with if we were making more substantive changes rather than just implementing the legal change?
Correct. The board at its discretion may make a change to a policy under several circumstances, but 2 of them that I believe apply here is if we believe that the change is minor. So it's not coming through pet press and it's not this large overhaul that requires 2 readings. Or if the change is necessitated by a need to approve something relatively quickly. So every 2 years, I am tasked with preparing a report for the State Board of Education through their IWAS system. Where the board needs to see the policy, and you actually did a review and approve this policy earlier this calendar year. Without these changes, because those changes weren't known. And provide the policy, and then I have to provide where on the website we provide this policy. When I received the reminder from IWAS that, hey, the report's coming and it's due, said, as a note, please make sure that these changes are also reflected in the policy. It hasn't come up through press yet, so it's coming up through me in a non-traditional but perfectly acceptable means of the board approving it.
And just for edification, the place that we publicly keep it is where we keep all of the policies, correct?
Yes.
On our website.
Correct.
Under the board section.
But this policy will also be communicated to all staff at both districts through their annual compliance training that will come out next Monday. And it will highlight that these are new elements. And then it's also communicated directly to the principals so that they're aware of it.
And since it says we have to communicate this annually to parents as well, how do parents get notified?
So it would be included in the student handbook, but also with the board having it published on a publicly accessible means like the website, that also meets those compliance requirements.
I don't recall ever receiving a student handbook as a parent. And I've had 2 kids now graduate from the district. Where does that handbook reside? Okay, so it's one of those like millions things that you have got.
Registration buttons that said, if I click on this link, I can read the registration. I can
I
read
see.
it.
Okay,
And it's also on the website.
okay.
So these changes will cascade down. Thank you.
Okay, next, teaching and learning.
My only teaching learning report is that I have an e-learning proposal for you. And so is there any other questions that you may have a burning desire to ask?
I think we covered that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
thank you. Okay, moving on to committee updates. So, starting with policy. Dr. Myers and I were talking about, so we've been, let's give a little background. We've been tweaking and retweaking this whole policy review that we're doing on a regular basis. So 2 years ago, we started talking about how we should all be looking at it rather than just having 2 members of the policy committee looking through it on a regular basis. It seems as though even while we tweaked it and we thought that, okay, we cut it up into too many sections and it was really too big to be going through each section. So now we drew it back to do over 2 years, we're gonna go through all of our policies. Other than when we do our press policy. However, it's sort of, we're trying to figure out a way to still get everybody more involved in it, because the whole point of doing this was to make sure we all know about our policies. And while I'm sure you all love hearing me talk, it seems as though you're just having me talk about the policies each time, and I don't know how effective that is for everybody. Not only does it take up time, I don't know that it really gets us all to where we need to be. So what we were brainstorming, is maybe breaking it down a little bit further, because the whole goal is really to have all of us doing it, right? Not to have just like kind of like not quite a committee of the whole, but that's sort of the idea, which is why we're making it a part of every board meeting. So we were discussing, and since we built in a couple times per year that we were not going to necessarily be doing a whole section, Dr. Myers and I were brainstorming, and Georgie agreed when I just bombarded her with it for the meeting, that perhaps what we should do instead is not go through it today, the whole section that's in your packet, but cut it up so that everybody takes a section and have each member report on a little bit of it each time in that same section, the same sections we've already cut out and we've already approved, to be using each time. That way, we all have some ownership over the task, so that you're all not just listening to me talk for 20 minutes. Or Georgie, it's just, she hasn't had an opportunity yet, but to do that way we're all each getting to know at least part of the policies. And that's the whole point, because I would hope that as part of reading your packet, while I know it's 140 pages long or so each time, I would hope that everybody reads that section, because that's part of it and that's why we put it in there. But I don't know that everyone is. So that's what we're hoping, is by cutting it down a little further and kind of assigning topics. I don't expect everybody to report tonight, because we're just not talking about this. So what I'm proposing is the section 16 that's in your packet, that maybe we break it down and kind of pick sections tonight. And again, you've seen what we're doing. I'm not expecting presentations on them. Just basically go through, and if you see something that you have a question on, or that you think you need to highlight for each of us to discuss or to talk about, whether at a future meeting or as part of our review the next time, bring it to our attention, and then we can look into it a little bit further. So is that something that you guys are on board with, or you want to hear me just talk about it instead?
Works for me. Sounds like a good idea. So we would just kind of read through it, on our own time and then kind of report back major
Right.
points, any questions or concerns we had.
Right, so the press policies, sorry, review that we do, so section 16 was the one we had for tonight. So it had, I think it's 13. 14 that are up. We could divide those up. Now I know some of them are bigger than others. For example, one of them that we have in here is the racial and ethnic equity policy that we had just gone through in a whole committee last year and approved. I don't know that we need to do a whole lot of tweaking in that, but it's still something that's good for our members that weren't here when we were doing that and adopting and approving it to still be aware of it. So I'm not saying you skip it, but that one is a rather large one. So perhaps, you know, that one person can take, but a couple of the others are relatively small, so we can kind of go through it and just be aware of it, and then we can just each go around in order on the sections, and then at the end of each committee section, like we're doing here, I could either just go through and for the next point, just sort of make assignments, unless you all want to pick specific ones out at the end of each time, you know, when we go through. But I would be proposing we do section 16, repeat section 16 next time. For honest edification, for the packet for next month, we would just include section 16 again. But we will right now kind of go through and divide up who's going to be responsible for which ones. And that way we can do that and see how that works. Because again, the goal is to have us all be knowledgeable about these policies. And I will say, in doing the packet that the administration put together and I went through and approved to submit, because it came up right after the last meeting, in order to submit that for that board governance accreditation that we just got. One of the questions they came back with and sent me an email and wanted me to go further in detail in is, tell me which board meetings over the last 2 years you guys talked about policy. Well, I was able to go back to my notes and tell them exactly which board meetings, because we have been meeting and doing it and reviewing it. It is part of good governance, and that's why we started trying to do it and implementing it. But I do think we can do a better job so that we're making it more effective, because we want to make these meetings efficient too. And we want to make them effective and efficient, not just doing it for the sake of doing it. So,
Sounds good to me.
all right. So when I was looking through, I mean, it's easy just to say, kind of just take two. Because if each person took two policies, we'd be there. Although, like I said, a couple of them are kind of tiny, but I meant to sit down and pre-assign them out, but I didn't get a chance to do that. But I did look through, and I know that the
Could I take 7, 10, 7, 12?
yep, that works, okay.
And how much time are we like to go in that?
This part, it's very
I
quick.
could lecture for 2 hours.
Well, and it's not a matter of lecturing. That's a good question. It's not a matter of lecturing. It's really just a matter of making, so I do think that's a good idea for you to be aware of these, because like I said, you weren't on the board when we did that. So 7-12, we just adopted that. It says it at the end, exactly when, because I don't, time that lose me. So we adopted it last August. After a year long, we had a whole committee and went through it, and multiple board members wrote it, rewrote it, used our stakeholders and all that. So that's a relatively new policy. I don't know that we need to do a whole lot with it, but I do think that it's good, especially for our new members, to read it and be familiar with it, since you weren't a part of it when we did that. And if you have ambiguities or questions that you have about our policy that you think we could make it better, do something, to talk about, it's really just a matter of bringing it to our attention. Because like I said, the understanding is all of us will have scanned through this section to be aware of it, but it's just asking each of us to kind of take a deep dive. And it might be, hey, I want to highlight everybody, take a look at this, number one, this, and make sure that, we all remember these are our duties as a board or whatever. So it should be fairly, usually we spend, it depends, some of the sections, they're shorter than they used to be, because we used to have twice as long each section. So now that we've cut them down, I would say no more than 5 minutes, if that. It might be 30 seconds that you take going through some of this. Like that one, those are the bigger ones. So just a matter of kind of going around. And since that falls at the end, you'll get a chance to see the first few. So, okay, so 7:10, 7:12. Doing that, so let's go back into that.
Does anyone else have preferences? Otherwise, can we just take 222?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So,
I'll do 7:15 and 7:20.
all right, so Eric can do 7:15, 7:20. So that takes care of the equity section.
I'll do achievement 628, 290, and 315.
280, 290, and 315.
Yep.
Okay. It's good,
I'll take 330 and 340.
okay. Okay, so that leaves,
Ray, you want to do community resource persons?
Yeah, I
Figure,
actually,
250 to Ray, okay?
and
I
255
almost
maybe.
stole mine.
Sorry.
Stole mine.
Nice.
Everybody stole mine.
And then I can do 260, 270.
Okay,
So what am I doing? 250 and 255?
yes. So that leaves none for me, but
Oh.
I think that I have, like I said, I've taken up a lot of time.
Get a break.
For the other one, so that's fine, and I will look at the next section. For the next month, and kind of look at them and try to parse them out, and. Anna's waving it at me, I can take a look at that, but I can look through them and see how long some of them are and try to like pre-cut them out, so we don't have to do this part next time. And then maybe we can just put in the packet, it'll have the assignments for the people, so I'll work with Anna to get
Can you
that.
send out a form in case we are interested in a particular one that we can just sign up for?
I could do that, I could just send out an email of here's what's there and see if anyone has,
Yeah.
we can do that. And then just as long as the
We
email
have
is
all
one
of
way
this,
back.
We could keep going till the November one and.
Yep. Yep, and we can, maybe I can just throw it into a spreadsheet and see if people just want us to do that, okay. So that'll be my job, that I'll do, instead of presenting on one of these, I'll create the spreadsheet and circulate that, or a Google sheet and circulate that.
And we can sign up for the section. ahead of
Yeah.
time.
Cause we do have it all figured, you know, it's planned,
Not
so,
like retouching it over. and
Yep.
over.
sounds good. And since we already did a lot of policy work tonight, that's our policy committee update. All right, so moving on to finance and advisory.
Oh,
Is that you?
yeah. Actually, the finance committee's meeting Monday at 5 o'clock.
Okay. You'll have a report for us next
I
meeting.
will.
Sounds good. All right, shared services.
We met this past Wednesday. And we were, so unfortunately, the meeting before Eric and I were both out sick. So, they had developed a philosophy for, basically. I don't want to say a job description, but like the qualities that we look for in a shared service. Superintendent slash administrator. So we kind of wordsmith that with District 120. And we also just, had another discussion regarding if we're hiring a new shared service employee or administrator, that we would like it to be brought to the shared service committee first so that we can hear input from both districts before it's brought to individual boards. Am I forgetting anything?
You mentioned salary philosophy, right?
Yeah.
And how often do you guys meet?
Every other week.
Okay.
So we meet again next Wednesday.
Okay. And then as part of that, just following up, everybody should have received your login information for the super eval tool that we're now going to be using. So it should be, there was an email that each of you should have gotten, it was a couple weeks ago. It was right before homecoming, so right before Bratfest. through your district email that had the login information for each board member into that. So I would say that everybody should look through their email and find that if they haven't. If they have any struggles with that or can't get into that system, reach out to, to myself or Anna, and we can try to figure out how to get you in touch with whoever needs to get you in touch. Everybody should, between it now and say the next meeting, should make sure that you can get in there and sort of just look around a little bit. Because the idea is going to be between now and I think Dr. Meyer said the November meeting, or I want to say he wants us to look around in it now. And between now and the next meeting or the meeting after, he is going to do like a test, I think for the December meeting, do a test, like kind of a follow-up and implement, rather than waiting till the end of the year to do the evaluation. He is going to populate some of those pieces and have us all do that for, I think, the December meeting. So that we've kind of done a mid-year review and start working with it now that we've, paid for it and started. We're starting to implement this program.
Do you know what it's called?
Super eval.
Yeah, I
Okay.
would recommend just, for now, just going in and exploring and navigating a little bit, and then at the next board meeting, if you have any questions about.
Right, but I don't even have the email.
Okay,
That might be our first issue then.
right. So that's why I'm sort of giving that assignment, is make sure everyone looks at that. So let's,
I
Take-
believe I didn't get it either.
okay.
Now
That-
there's more than two
September
hundred
6th.
business
September 6th was the.
Okay,
September 6th.
yeah.
in Oakland, California are going to strike this afternoon.
Okay, the super eval emails came out. Yeah, that was my recollection. It was like that week of September 6th. So,
It's in response to the wave of right.
Does anybody know how to work this?
um. So I don't know who, because I didn't initiate that program. Who was responsible for sending those out?
Those should have come, I believe, from Super Eval.
So if we have two board members who didn't get those emails, okay, so Anna's gonna look into that and follow up. Did everybody else receive the email? Ray, or you're checking? Sorry. If you didn't, let Anna know so that she can, is that should be the goal, is just to look in. We're not, there's no other assignment between now and the next meeting. Just make sure we can get in, because eventually we all need to be into it. And right now it's just sort of there to get us started.
Yeah, it came from supereval.com.
So Anna's made note of that, and we'll look into that for you too, and Ray will let her know if he didn't get it. I know I got it, but I hadn't had a chance to play with it, so that should be on all of our task lists. Because, and I know the high school board got theirs at the same time, because Peter and I talked about it at the homecoming parade, so that's one of the things we all needed to task both boards to do between now and the next meeting. And then, like I said, Kevin said he'll populate it more substantively once he knows we're all in it and all can get into it. So there's no substantive pieces to it just yet, but move that one. Community outreach, is there any report from that committee?
No.
Okay, no problem.
I will say, well, there's been brief discussions on where we're going and what we're gonna be looking at, so pretty soon there's gonna be a lot of information. Right, Emily?
That's right. Okay. I should pull out my phone for the date of the representative. I'll do that. All right, moving on to the representative updates. So the STEAM Foundation, that's the information I was looking for, sorry. So the STEAM Foundation, we met, we did plan, we are doing our night at the races again in November. It will be November 10th. They're doing it at Las Palmas this year. since I thought it
Yay.
has shut down.
That's fun.
Yeah, so it should be a lot of fun. There will be tickets sold in advance. Once we get that information, I'm happy to push it out to everybody just to have that. It's a fundraising event, so the STEAM Foundation is an independent nonprofit that I, as our representative of the board, am on their board for, but everybody is encouraged to attend and participate. You can buy tickets for the evening, you can buy like horse races, they set up screens and they're gonna have TVs and stuff set up to do where they show horse races and they have classes and kids and people who just can sponsor a horse, can name a horse, can do this. And you use pretend money and bet on the horses and you can win raffle tickets and it's a fundraiser though. And it's one of our two big fundraisers that the STEAM Foundation does per year. It's a lot of fun for those of us. I know Ray, a few others attended last year. It's a lot of fun. So that should be a good night. So mark your calendars if you're able to do that on November 10th. And they are looking for, sponsors and donations and things like that. They're going to be like either silent auction or raffles. We're still trying to work that out. So that will be our next big thing coming up there. CEDAW, Eric, do you have?
Yeah, I attended the CEDAW Governing Board meeting on August 23rd. The majority of that meeting was focused on going over the special education program report. It was reviewed in detail, all 104 pages of it were gone through. The recommendations for each area were addressed. The report was referred more to as a progress report. And, in my perspective, kind of downplayed the findings as more of a work in progress than kind of a comprehensive area of need that was presented. When asked about any concerns regarding liability, CEDAW had no concerns regarding liability, stating that because of the report and the plan with the report, it kind of served as the district stating their awareness of it and taking accountability to start working on it. Most of the action that is supposed to take place is supposed to be happening in 7 different teams called Standards for Exceptional Services Teams. They're referring to them as SES teams. And the majority of the work to meet these recommendations is supposed to be occurring within those teams. I was able to follow up with the superintendent a little bit just to get some more information about how those teams are doing. And those teams have not yet started to meet. So just to kind of give you more of a timeline here, the report came out June 30th, it was presented to the board, July 27th, about a month later. About a month later, it was presented to the governing board on August 23rd. I was able to check in with the superintendent on the 25th of September, so another month, and those SES teams have not begun meeting yet. They are anticipated to meet within the coming weeks, which takes us now into October. So since the report coming out in June to October, those teams are still not meeting yet to begin the work here. It was acknowledged that the report doesn't include a financial appraisal, and so at this point, there's really no direct financial impact to member districts available. I'm not clear on any administrative changes that are happening right away, but there were some questions raised by some of the other member districts about what's being done administratively to rebuild trust in the district. And there was a lot of focus kind of around the pandemic and, starting work in the pandemic and not really.
I'm sorry, I got lost.
Did I go too fast? I'm sorry.
If you can speak a little louder, please.
Yeah. When asked about any changes to administrative practices, it was mentioned that a lot of the work done over the past few years was during the pandemic, and so, the leaders didn't necessarily feel like they were able to lead their true, in their true ways, and were kind of limited by having to work around the pandemic. The biggest thing that stood out to me through all of this was just that timeline of when this report first came out, to the fact that it's October and these teams are still not yet meeting to address the recommendations, that are really years long.
Has our administration made any decisions yet in terms of CEDAW? We kind of chatted, Kevin had asked for our permission last time. Nothing yet.
We're continuing to work like through that right now. So it's really like exploring and continuing, so.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
I am.
Okay. Thanks.
Village liaison?
Yeah. There wasn't really a lot going on with the village board. But there were two things that they mentioned, and I don't know if people would be interested. There's a walk to end Alzheimer's on September 30th at Independence Grove. And I know that's something that's really having an effect on a lot of families. And the second one I thought was pretty neat, because I don't know if the school is aware of this for the students. There's the second annual lure of the local art, which starts on October 14th. And it's being held in a vacant building over at Tolly and 45 in that shopping center. They donated the space.
Ray, can you speak a little louder? Just a little louder because I can't hear.
Okay,
So sorry.
I'm sorry. So I was saying that there's the second lure of the local art, which is put on by the Mundelein Arts Commission. And what they're doing, starting October 14th and going to November 12th, every weekend they have on display art that's curated by local artists, and they're trying to attract local artists to do paintings that reflect on the community, that reflects on them, and kind of talks about a connection to people themselves, places. It sounded like it's really, really interesting. And I didn't know, maybe I can send you something and see if the students might be aware of it and you don't want to participate in it. Because I know they participate in that art festival September 9th and 10th. A lot of high school did paintings there, so I'll send it to you and see. Okay,
When was the walk to end Alzheimer's?
September 30th,
This Saturday, okay.
this Saturday.
Saturday.
Yeah, the Independence Grove.
Hey, piggyback on something that Ray said. Sure. We do have this positive space studio that just opened up not that long ago. It's also here in Mundelein. It's a couple of artists, entrepreneurs who live here in the district as well. Their children go to, the oldest one, excuse me, goes to MG. And they have another studio space in the city. As they moved out to the suburbs, they wanted to take that with, and so that's really cool. I think it is like across the street from the Wings place, Frank's. Yeah. And they also have like an open house the second Friday of every month.
Where's the location? I'm sorry.
It's here in Mundelein over by
Right
There's a
across from
break.
Ace Hardware.
East Hardin.
And you said there's an open house the second Friday of every month?
Yes.
el segundo día es aniversario de casamiento sobre el dos personas.
Thanks. That's good to be aware of. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Does anybody have, any item of the consent agenda they want removed to be talked about individually? Looking at, okay, so if we're not doing that, then we're just gonna move, to. I will make a motion that we adopt the consent agenda as listed on the agenda.
Second,
Secretary, please call the roll.
Fingerhut.
Aye.
Hinsky.
aye.
Rose.
Aye.
Carl.
I,
Aguirre.
Aye.
Pelletier, aye. Durham.
Aye.
All right, so. Moving forward with the board action items tonight. I know we are tabling the first one relating to the CDL property that was on the agenda. As T mentioned to us, we're still waiting for the approval of their attorneys, so we'll have that one be brought before us another time. But I will move that the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 accept the superintendent's recommendation to adopt board policy 7-180, prevention of and response to bullying, intimidation, and harassment as presented.
Second,
Secretary, please call the roll.
Fingerhut.
Aye.
Rose.
aye.
Carl.
I,
Hinsky. Aye. Durham.
Hi.
Pelletier, aye. Aguirre.
And next, I move that the Board of Education of Mundelein Elementary School District 75 accept the superintendent's recommendation to adopt the e-learning program as presented.
second,
Secretary, please call the roll.
Fingerhut.
Aye.
Carl.
I,
Aguirre.
Aye.
Pelletier, aye. Durham.
Aye.
Hinsky. Aye. Rose.
Aye.
So that's are all of the board action items that we have at this point in time. So I will now move that we go into adjourn and into executive session. I move that we adjourn into executive session at 7:56 PM.
Second.
And we are going into executive session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel of the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity pursuant to statute, and also for the discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act pursuant to statute, whether proposed for the approval by the body of the minutes for semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by statute.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I.
Opposed?